Have you ever, tried to describe a completely transient, fleeting movement? I mean, imagine trying to capture a cloud in a jar, but instead of a cloud, it's human motion.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult.
Hmm.
A gesture happens, and then it just vanishes.
Right. And then all you have is memory. So today's deep dive is into a source document that attempts what honestly seems impossible. It's trying to create this deterministic, precise language to describe absolutely all human movement.
And if you think about how we normally teach physical actions, it's almost entirely visual. It's a very monkey see, monkey do kind of situation.
Yeah, you just copy the person standing in front of you.
Exactly. We rarely stop to recognize how incredibly hard it is to transmit a specific physical sequence from one mind to another using only text.
Without, losing something in translation.
Right, because without a system that guarantees the input will produce the exact same physical output every single time, passing along choreography turns into this physical game of telephone over the generations. The movements just mutate.
And that's exactly what this universal dance notation system we are looking at is trying to solve. I have to say, as a non-dancer, I walked into these sources assuming dance was entirely subjective, like you just feel the music and you move.
That's the romantic view of it, for sure.
Yeah, but reading through this system, it treats human kinematics like a biological physics equation. It wants to encode the fluid art of movement into a universal language, but, without losing the soul in the process.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to write the poetry of movement, you first need an alphabet.
You do. And that exposes a massive vulnerability in how we currently communicate physical actions. There's just this glaring lack of a universal vocabulary.
The sources highlight this perfectly with the image of a classical ballet dancer executing an arabesque.
Yeah.
For a trained ballet dancer, hearing the word arabesque is like a trigger.
It is. They immediately know to stand on one leg, extend the other leg directly behind them, hold their arms in a specific pose. Right, it works because it's a shared convention, but what happens when a choreographer invents something entirely new? Something that literally has no name.
Well, the current system just breaks down. If the vocabulary doesn't exist, you rely entirely on approximation. So the challenge the creators of this notation system faced was twofold, really.
Okay, what were the two parts?
First, a description must be exhaustively detailed to guarantee exact physical reproduction. But second, it still has to be readable by a human, not just a computer.
Which brings us to the foundation of the whole system. The text lays out three non-negotiable pillars. And if a description fails to answer even one of these three questions, the system ceases to be deterministic. It just leaves room for interpretation.
Right, the three pillars. We're looking at what, how, and when.
Let's start with pillar one, the what.
So pillar one is the anatomical form. It establishes the spatial position, the configuration of the joints, and the relationship between every single segment of the physical body.
And the text breaks down the body into a minimal but, I guess, sufficient vocabulary. You have the trunk, which encompasses the pelvis, the spine like lumbar, thoracic, cervical, the rib cage, and the shoulders.
Yes, and then you have the head and neck, which importantly includes the gaze.
Oh, yeah, the gaze. I thought that was a really interesting detail.
It's crucial, actually. Where the eyes look entirely changes the balance and the intention of a movement.
Makes sense. And then you have the upper and lower limbs. The system maps out the basic measurable actions these segments can perform.
Right, so rather than relying on vague terms like, reach or stretch, it uses precise biomechanical terms. Flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, internal or external rotation, circumduction, translation.
Okay, let's translate a couple of those for anyone listening whose anatomy class is just a distant memory. I mean, flexion and extension are straightforward, right? Bending and straightening a joint. But abduction.
Abduction is literally pulling a limb away from the midline of the body. Like if you were standing with your arms at your sides and you raise them straight up to form a T shape, you were abducting your arms.
Oh, okay. And adduction.
Adduction is adding them back to the center, and circumduction is drawing a cone shape in the air with a limb.
I see the utility there for sure. But reading this section, I initially felt like I was looking at a sterile 3D wireframe rendering of a human. I mean, let me read the source's deterministic anatomical description of that arabesque we talked about earlier. Listen to how exhausting this gets.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. Right leg in full extension, vertical, foot in contact with the floor, all body weight on this foot. Left leg in full extension, lifted behind the body at hip height, 90 degrees to the floor, foot pointed.
It keeps going, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it says pelvis and shoulders aligned facing forwards. Spine slightly inclined forwards 5 to 10 degrees to compensate for the weight of the back leg. Right arm extended forwards at shoulder height, slightly rounded. I mean, it takes a massive paragraph just to convey what most people would describe as, stand on one leg and lift the other back.
It is intensely verbose. There's no getting around that. But consider the alternative. If I just tell you to stand on one leg and lift the other back, you might lift your back leg at a 45-degree angle instead of 90.
Yeah, that's true.
You might aggressively tilt your pelvis forward to get your leg higher, which completely changes your center of gravity.
And then the movement looks entirely different from what was intended.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that specific detail about the spine inclining 5 to 10 degrees. The notation isn't just describing aesthetics, it's mapping the literal physics required to keep a human body from falling over.
Wow, okay. So by mandating this level of anatomical verbosity, the system eliminates the bug of human guesswork. The skeleton is just locked into place.
Exactly. The joint angles are locked. We have a perfect 3D model.
And this is where I was pushing back while reading, a perfect 90-degree hip angle isn't dancing. Right. If you program a robot to hold that angle, it's just a statue.
A very precise statue, but yes.
Right. It isn't expressing anything. The skeleton is there, but where does the feeling come from? How do you write down emotion?
That requires pillar 2, the HRW, the dynamic quality. If the what gives us the bones, the how is the nervous system driving the energy, it defines the texture and the sensation of the movement.
And to solve this, the notation incorporates Rudolf Laban's framework, right?
Yes, Rudolf Laban.
Reading about his work here was fascinating because he basically found a way to measure the invisible. He argued that artistic intention isn't just mysterious magic, it's actually a combination of distinct, measurable physical variables.
Laban distilled the vast spectrum of human motion into 4 fundamental factors: weight, time, space, and flow. When you modulate these 4 variables, you can basically describe the dynamic quality of any movement on Earth.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Let's pull those 4 variables apart, because this is where the system starts to feel less like choreography and more like a periodic table of elements.
That's a great way to look at it.
So first is weight. It operates on a spectrum from light to strong. And what stood out to me is that light isn't about physical mass, right? It's the sensation of weightlessness, of resisting gravity and floating upwards.
Right, and on the other end, strong is fully surrendering to gravity, anchoring yourself, applying real pressure toward the floor.
Then there is time. And crucially, this is not about a stopwatch. It's about your relationship with the progression of time. It ranges from sudden to sustained.
Yes, a sudden movement is explosive. It has an abrupt acceleration, a very brief impulse. A sustained movement is continuous. The velocity remains completely fluid without any hesitation or interruption.
The third variable is space. Direct versus indirect. A direct movement cuts straight from point A to point B. It has absolute laser-like focus.
Whereas an indirect movement explores the space. It's sinuous, multidirectional, like a ribbon catching a draft of air.
And finally, flow. This measures how the energy is contained within the body, right? Flow ranges from free to controlled.
Exactly. Free flow is uninhibited. Once the movement initiates, you surrender to the momentum. It will be very difficult to stop halfway through.
Like swinging a heavy bat or something.
Exactly. And controlled flow means the muscle tension is so perfectly managed that you could freeze the movement at any microsecond, almost like a photograph.
Looking at these 4 variables, weight, time, space, flow, it genuinely acts like a combinatorial equation. The sources provide a chart mapping out Laban's 8 basic action verbs. If we plug in different extremes on those spectrums, we get entirely different physical reactions.
Well.
Let's test it.
Okay, let's do it.
If we input strong weight, sudden time, direct space, and free flow, what do we get?
You get a punch. You are heavy, explosive, moving in a straight line and releasing the energy without restriction.
But if we flip the switches on the console, let's do lightweight, sustained time, indirect space, and free flow, exactly the opposite end of the spectrum.
That yields a float. You are resisting gravity, moving continuously, meandering through space without a fixed endpoint, and just letting the momentum carry you.
It's wild. The text lists others derived from this matrix too. Press, glide, whip, dab, ring, and flick. Think about the verb wring, like wringing water out of a heavy towel.
Oh, that's a good one to map.
Right. If you map it, it requires strong weight, sustained time, indirect space because of the twisting motion, and controlled flow because of the intense muscle tension. It maps the physical reality perfectly.
It really does.
If you've ever watched a beautiful performance and thought the emotion was just untouchable artistic magic, I mean, this proves it's actually just physics. It's incredibly validating for anyone trying to learn this stuff.
It gives us the vocabulary to understand the recipe of that emotion. But we do hit a logistical wall here. We have the anatomy positioned, we have the dynamic energy selected, but a punch implies speed, and a float implies duration.
Right.
If we don't have a clock, a sudden punch could conceptually take 10 seconds, which just turns it back into a push.
Which means movement cannot exist outside of a timeline. And this triggers pillar 3, the WN, the temporal structure.
Because without locking down the sequence and timing of events, the whole system just falls apart. The text outlines strict rules for the when. First is absolute duration, meaning indicating the time in exact seconds, or in usable time, like, say, 4 beats at 60 BPM.
But it goes way beyond just a stopwatch. It demands you map the sequentiality. Like, are two joints moving at the exact same time? That's simultaneous.
Or is it sequential, like a domino effect? Is it overlapping, where joint B starts moving just before joint A finishes? Or is it wave-like, where the energy propagates through the body fluidly?
You also have to chart accents, which are specific beats of intensity, and pauses. Plus, the overall musical relationship. Is the dancer moving synchronously with the music?
Right.
Are they deliberately moving in counterpoint to the rhythm, or is the movement completely independent of the sound?
There is a really striking visual in the source material depicting this.
Oh, I love that graphic, the one with the glowing, translucent spiral.
Yes, the spiral of musical notes ascending upward and flowing alongside the notes are a series of footprints. It beautifully captures the idea of the physical body tracing a literal path through a temporal timeline.
That visual represents the final assembly, doesn't it? Because to ensure determinism, the notation requires all 3 pillars to be formatted in a strict algorithmic syntax.
You can't just write a paragraph willy-nilly. You follow a specific order.
Right. It's body part, then anatomical action, then final position, then dynamic quality, then duration, and finally temporal relationship. It reads basically like machine code.
It does.
The text actually provides a comprehensive example of a spinal flexion. And listen to how dense this gets when all the pillars are synthesized. Okay, quote, spine initiates a forward flexion segment by segment from the cervicals. The movement propagates in a descending wave. Cervicals, 1 second. Thoracics, 1 second. Lumbars, 1 second.
So that secures the what and the when.
Right, and then it layers in the HOW. It says quality, strong at the start due to head weight, then sustained, free flow, total duration, 3 seconds, arms hang abandoned, simultaneously knees slightly bend to accompany the trunk's weight. Body weight shifts slightly forward onto the balls of the feet.
Notice that tiny detail at the end about the knees simultaneously bending.
Yeah, why is that so important?
Well, the notation understands that if you flex your spine forward for 3 seconds, gravity will pull you down. By dictating the simultaneous knee bend and weight shift, it prevents the dancer from losing their balance. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proves this system isn't just a loose guideline, it's a meticulously crafted algorithm for the human form.
It is entirely comprehensive, but I mean, it also exposes a massive practical flaw.
Oh, the verbosity.
Exactly. If it requires a dense, multi-sentence paragraph to properly describe a 3-second spine roll, writing out a 2-hour ballet would take encyclopedias. It would be a multi-volume set.
It would take a choreographer years to write and a dancer months to decipher.
Right, so how does anyone actually use this? No one is going to use a system that cumbersome in the real world.
Well, the creators of the system anticipated that exact friction. If the system was only that granular, it would be unusable. The genius of the notation lies in its structural hierarchy. It operates on 3 levels of precision. Think of it like computer programming. You don't always need to write in binary machine code.
Right, most people write in Python or, just click a button on a user interface.
Exactly. So level 3 is the machine code. It's the complete description we just discussed, breaking down every micro movement of every joint. You only use level 3 when you are defining a brand new, never-before-seen movement.
But once you've defined it, you can package it up and move to level 1.
Precisely. Level 1 is codified vocabulary. You use predefined terms that have already been exhaustively mapped out at level 3. Classical ballet effectively did this centuries ago.
Oh, like the word plie.
Yes. A word like plié, which means bending the knees while keeping a vertical spine, acts as a level 1 shortcut. It already has the anatomical form and the sustained controlled dynamic quality baked into the definition.
So you just write plie, and you've instantly saved yourself a paragraph of level 3 syntax. The dancer reads the shortcut and essentially unzips the file in their mind.
That's a perfect analogy.
And what's cool is this notation isn't restricted to classical ballet. Modern dance vocabulary is codified here too. The text breaks down Martha Graham's signature movements, like the contraction and release, or even just a standard floor roll.
The Graham contraction is an incredible example of mapping emotion to anatomy. At level 3, it's defined as the pelvis in posterior tilt, meaning tucked under, with the spine in deep flexion forming an inverted C shape.
And the rib cage is fully compressed via complete exhalation, right?
Exactly. And a dynamic quality is specific too.
Yeah.
It's strong and sustained, eventually becoming sudden at the peak.
And then the release flips all the variables. The pelvis shifts into an anterior tilt, the spine goes into complete extension, and the rib cage undergoes maximal expansion on the inhale.
And the dynamic quality reverses to sudden, then sustained, with free flow. By codifying that as a level 1 term, a choreographer can just write Graham contraction 2 beats, and the entire physical and emotional state is basically guaranteed.
That's brilliant. Oh, and there is also level 2 modified vocabulary.
Right. Level 2 is when you take a level 1 shortcut, but tweak a single variable. For instance, you could write plie, but with sudden free flow.
So you don't have to redefine what the knees and the spine are doing. You only explicitly state the deviation from the norm.
Exactly. But to keep this whole 3-level architecture from collapsing, the system relies on 5 golden rules of determinism. These act as the non-negotiable laws of physics for the notation.
Okay, lay it on me. What's rule 1?
The first rule is foundational. Always specify the 3 pillars: what, how, when.
Right. If one is missing, the code won't compile.
Rule 2. Specify relative positions. You have to map the body's relation to the ground, its own axis, and other segments.
Because a 90-degree arm extension means nothing if we don't know if the dancer is standing upright or lying on their back. Gravity changes everything.
Rule 3 reinforces the timeline. Always provide absolute durations and sequences.
Got it. And rule 4 is the one that really challenges how we normally communicate. It dictates, never assume the reader will understand. The text literally says, prefer too much precision to not enough. That goes against everything we are taught about, like concise, elegant writing.
It does, but literary writing relies on a shared human experience to fill in the blanks. Deterministic notation cannot tolerate blanks.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if you describe an arm raise in measure 1 and you don't explicitly write that the arm lowers in measure 2, the system dictates the arm stays raised. You cannot assume the dancer will naturally lower it. If it isn't explicitly written, that does not exist.
That makes total sense. And finally, rule 5. Use Laban vocabulary for qualities. Weight, time, space, flow are mandatory to capture the intention.
So what does this all mean when you step back? When you zoom out and look at this entire architecture, it's essentially a 3-layer language.
You have the basic vocabulary of movement words, the mandatory qualifiers dictating the energy, and the temporal structure organizing it all on a timeline.
It occupies a perfect middle ground. It possesses the strict, unyielding precision of computer code, yet by utilizing levels 1 and 2, it remains entirely readable by a natural human being.
Right, it doesn't trap you in the pure abstraction of data, but it also frees you from the rigid, single-perspective limitation of just recording a dance on video.
Absolutely.
Well, to wrap this deep dive up, we started by looking at the seemingly impossible challenge of capturing the transient nature of human movement. And the solution this universal dance notation system provides is combining raw anatomical mechanics with Laban's dynamic intention and locking them both onto a strict temporal grid.
That trifecta gives us the mathematical tools to preserve the magic of motion.
It really does.
And for you listening, whether you are trying to communicate an abstract workflow in a corporate boardroom, write a technical manual for a piece of machinery, or just understand the mechanics behind a piece of avant-garde art, the principle holds true. Absolute clarity only comes when you clearly define your what, your how, and your when.
Leave one of those out and you guarantee misinterpretation, the 3 pillars of clarity. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, inspired by these sources. If we can now codify human movement with this level of deterministic precision, like if we can map exact physical spatial reality combined with the nuanced intention of human energy through Laban's factors, could this be the missing blueprint for artificial intelligence?
Oh, wow. That's a huge question.
Right. Could this be how we teach robotics, not just how to process data, but how to physically feel gravity, sequence intention, and move through our physical world with actual human-like grace?
It really forces us to ask whether grace is just a deeply complex algorithm we've finally managed to write down.
It really does. Something to think about the next time you watch a dancer cross the stage. Until next time, keep diving deep.